Hello and well met. This is Laren again. This is part 4 in series of creating content for streams like overlays for OBS, that sort of thing. I've done 2 or 3 other videos, 3 videos before this, kind of going over the different aspects of this, and I'm now finalizing this SmiteWorks based one that's based off of the original Fantasy Grounds kind of colors. What I have up here right now is my paid version of Canva. There is a free version, but it is kind of limited, so I just wanted to let you know up front that it doesn't come with a lot of the assets, and there's some limitations on the sizes and what you can export and that sort of thing. But if you have the full paid version, I think it's around 150 per year. There's a lot of usage that you'll get out of this. I use it quite a bit. So right now I'm still putting together the overlay. I use this for a little recap. I use this little background image type in this texture from the Fantasy Grounds interface, and then put this big white block in here to essentially to make it a spot for us to cut this out, because we want it to look kind of like this once we're done. So this is a kind of a mock-up to kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like, and then this is going to be the actual final version. So I went ahead and made little adjustments since the last video. I kind of recentered this icon. I added this dice tray here, and then this dice comes from the SmiteWorks assets pack that they have for for their developers and such. And then over here, these 2 icons came from the portal on the Atlassian, where they have a publisher's kind of a media kit. So some of this stuff you can get from there, and I'll put all those links at the end of the video. But nonetheless, this is the final version. So I want to export it, and I kind of wanted to show you how that works, or how that can go. So in Canva, you have a way to export this. This is in a 2K resolution right now, so it's going to be a little big. But if you're going to do a high quality stream like a 2K or 4K, you want to probably use something like this. But if you're only doing an HD, like a 1920 by 1080, this one is like 20. I don't remember what the dimensions are, but essentially this is the larger one step up to 2K. And the reason I did that because it maintains its quality if you shrink it, or if you have to expand it for any reason, at least it won't lose quality. If you make it at the quality that you want exactly, nothing wrong with that, but just remember, it's harder to go bigger. So it's better to start bigger and then shrink it down if you need to. So I'm going to go ahead and export this. Now I don't want to export both of these, just number 2. This is the final. So I'm going to go ahead and take this downloads, and it says transparent background. We don't have to worry about that right now. It's in PNG format, and then I don't want all pages. I'm going to deselect that, and I'm only going to extract page 2, and then hit download. So that's just kind of differentiating what I want to actually download for Fantasy Grounds and for the overlay, because I'm going to bring that over and show you how to set that up. So this is 2560 by 1440, the dimensions, just so you know. I could go down to 1920 by 1080, which that's probably the most common size, but I got it one size up to 2K, so it looks a lot nicer regardless of the format that you're using as far as streaming goes. So I'm going to go ahead and close Canva for now, and I will bring over the overlay for Fantasy Grounds, and this is OBS. So this is how we're going to set this up. So right now I have this display capture going on right now, and you can move this around. This will actually be Fantasy Grounds once we get the overlay in here. And now what I'm going to do is add a source. So in this case, I want to add that file that I rendered, but I have to adjust it with GIMP. I want to cut out the center, because that allows you to hide some of your periphery. Like maybe I don't want this title bar up here, whatever it might be. So I'm going to go ahead and take the basically I'm going to take the download that I just created and edit that with GIMP. And GIMP is a free program, so if you don't have Photoshop or one of the Corel or whatever, this would be helpful for that. So I'm going to go to the downloads folder, and I'm hoping that it went in here, because every time I do this, it seems like I don't know where the file went. So that's a me problem. Okay, so why does that look? Oh, this is from yesterday. Okay. Yeah, so these are just samples from yesterday. I think I gotta wait for it to think. Come on, do its thing. So it's kind of going through the library. Okay, so here's the final version. So if I right click on it, I'm gonna actually open this with GIMP. I have other photo editing software, but I'm kind of showing you this with the free program because not everyone has access to some of the other tools. So here's the final version. So I'm going to cut out this white part in the center. So I want to go to Layer, Transparency, make sure there's an alpha channel. In this case, there's already one there. And then up here, there's this fuzzy select tool. And I have the threshold up to about 40 right now, which is kind of strong, but I want to cut out this entire white part here. And once I select that, it'll have this region selected. I'll hit delete, and that'll take out that center. So the reason I do this is so you can actually overlay it on top of something, and then you'll be able to actually, basically you'll be able to hide stuff if you need to. And I made this very minimal so that we can see Fantasy Grounds. So now what I'm going to do is export it, and then again, I'm going to do a WebP file because it's a lot smaller. It doesn't take as much hard drive space. And then I'm going to export it. In this case, I'm not going to follow the SmiteWorks guidelines because this is not going into Fantasy Grounds, so I'll just have it at 100%. I'll leave everything else. Hit export, and it should be going to the hard drive. So let me minimize this. Yeah, so here's the final version. So what I'm going to be doing here is dragging and dropping or adding this in as a source. So if I go to the sources, I need to go into images, and then I'll add a source. I don't have that source yet, so I need to say add a new source. So I'm going to call this SmiteWorks _ Fantasy Grounds overlay, something like that. So I have an idea what this is. There we go. And then hit add source. Now I need to select the file. So I'll go ahead and look on my hard drive for wherever that is. And in this case, it was on my downloads folder. So I got that pulled in, and it looks pretty good. And that's what it looks like before anything else is added or taken away. And now what I'll do is the display capture is underneath this. So I'll bring that forward by dragging this up and then making the adjustments. So I want to adjust here and here. I don't think this is the cutout version. No. So I imported the wrong version. Let me go and change the properties. Yeah, I wanted the WebP version, not the, what's this? Okay, there we go. So the WebP version is a lot smaller, and that had the actual cutout. So now that I have that there, the SmiteWorks overlay is on the bottom, so I want to move that up. And you can see it kind of hides some of this edge. So I'm going to bring up Fantasy Grounds now, and we'll see what that looks like. So I'm going to actually move this out of the way. Actually, I'm going to leave it here so you guys can see the sizing issues that you can come across. So I'm going to bring this preview window up first. And what I'm doing is kind of sizing it up for this window. And this can be kind of tricky. So essentially, I want to cover up the menus. And there's some things I don't need. when it comes to showing Fantasy Grounds. So that's kind of what you're doing. You can hit Shift and Alt to maintain the aspect ratio, or you can hit Control, and that makes it so you can move it anywhere you want without, so that's kind of the way to do this. And this gives you more freedom when you do Shift. So I'm going to do that, and it kind of stretches it, so you got to be kind of careful with that. But that's roughly where it's going to go. This isn't the final thing, but I got to bring up Fantasy Grounds. So I'm going to move this over, and then you'll be able to see I'm going to be moving that. So I'm going to move this back over to my other screen, and that way we can see Fantasy Grounds, and you guys will still be able to kind of see what I'm doing. So now that I have that up there, there's Fantasy Grounds. So now I'm going to be playing around with centering it. So like I don't need all of this, like this white border on top, and I don't want my taskbar from my computer. So I'm going to take that corner, kind of drag it to where it's there, and now I'm going to move it underneath the overlay and take a look at that. So that's not bad. So let me kind of adjust it a little bit. Oops, I got the wrong layer selected. Dang it. Let's see. Okay, so I want to make sure I have the display capture selected, because that's what I'm moving right now. And then kind of taking the, see, here's that toolbar down here. I don't want that showing. So I'll shift that into place and kind of playing around with where exactly I want Fantasy Grounds to show up. So I'm just dragging the corners of the image and then making adjustments from there. All right, so that's pretty close to where this is centered now. So I have Fantasy Grounds under it, or basically the display capture is underneath, and then Fantasy Grounds overlay is on top. And being that I use a similar texture, it kind of almost blends in seamlessly. If you look carefully, it's kind of crazy. That might be a little overkill, like it might be a little much, like maybe too much themed there or something like that, but at least it looks okay. It's not bad. So anyway, so this is kind of how that looks. And then again, I would probably set up the desktop the way you're going to have it for your game or your presentation or whatever you're doing. So remember earlier in the other episode, I turned everything off. So now I'm going to go in back and putting everything back into place. Generally speaking, I always have things or windows in the same place. And then I'm going to re-expand this menu on the right, and I'm going to go back into the options. And it does have the restore windows on start. That's important to have that, so you always kind of have the same location every time you start Fantasy Grounds. Because once you place these windows, you don't really want them to move, especially if you're capturing just this part, and you don't want to rescale Fantasy Grounds or anything during a stream. So that's kind of, you'd have this blocked out, and you would only be showing this piece if that's what you wanted to do. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn the dice tower back on, which I had turned off. And then the background decal, I'm going to open that up too. So the background decal is just going to be our yellow and brown decals, one of my favorite logo colors. So generally, if you have already indexed the decals, this goes a little bit quicker. Depend on what you're doing, but this isn't bad. Like, this used to be a lot less snappier. Okay, so that's okay. So there we go. That's this. And now, let's see. I'm gonna move this back over a little bit, the dice tower, and then I'm gonna stretch my chat window out a little bit. And now I'm going to turn the dice back on. So I'm going to go to the dice. I have them all turned off right now, so you can actually hide certain dice if you want to. There we go. So there's all the dice. And then I can go up 1 to increase the size, or actually 2. So that way we can see the dice, but I think that's good. 110. It's at 110%. So that should be halfway decent. Now, during a stream, you might want them a little bit, you know, like bigger. So there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to go with 120, that way you can actually see the face of the die. So they can get a little tiny at times. And if you got bad eyes like myself, you know what I'm talking about. So now that we have this part, now I'm going to be setting up the combat tracker. So generally speaking, I'll have it in here. And then I'll have this thing kind of stretched down where I can see a majority of the combatants when you have it. And notice I only have a couple inches down here. And that's generally just for reading text. If I need to go back and instead of scrolling up or whatever, I can actually close this window temporarily and then just bring it back up, and it'll stay where you put it. And that's generally what you want to do with windows in Fantasy Grounds anyways. Is once you bring up a window, it's going to go in the center, but after that you can move it wherever you want. You park it there and then you close it, it'll stay there. Especially if you turn on the option that I mentioned earlier, which is desktop restore windows on start. So if you want everything to pop up the where you left it, make sure that's on before you exit the table. And that'll help with that. And then I'm going to go ahead and lock the dice tower so I don't accidentally move it. And I'm going to basically lock the chat window. And these two won't move. These are, and the dice tray, these are the only 3 things that I can think of that will lock. Everything else is free floating. So you'll have to keep that in mind. And if you rescale Fantasy Grounds for any reason, if you do this minimize, maximize thing, it's going to throw off your thing. So you got to be careful with that. Seen a lot of people struggling with that. And what will happen is it resets the position based off the last sizing that you did. So you don't want to do that in the middle of a stream. You want to make sure you have it maximized and then you got everything laid out, and don't mess with that. Or the scaling button. You want to do all that before your stream. So I've had that happen. So you lose your positioning when you mess around with that. It's okay to do that beforehand, but not during your stream. So this is, if you want to clear the text, you right click in here and that gets rid of the text. So all we're doing right now is kind of making this look nice for the stream. Now the other thing is, let's say you wanted to feature the map more than the desktop. So I'm going to go into the library and go to modules, and you can see I only have just the basic SRD, but I'm going to go ahead and activate the Fantasy Grounds battle map. Let's see, it's called Battle something. I think that's what it was called. Yeah, FG Battle Maps. Okay, so these are the ones that you see a lot in the old videos. These are kind of like your demo maps. So if I click on Images and Maps, this will bring up the different variations of maps. So let's go to no grid, no grid, no grid. I want some grids here. So under dark tunnels filled with water. Okay, so we'll do that. We'll use this as an example. So maybe during your stream, you'll have this set somewhere where you can actually see the map kind of, but still have room for all of your stuff. That could be the NPCs or whatever. So let me just grab one NPC just so I have an example. So if I go into the campaign and go to NPCs, let's do something kind of cool. So this is a cavern. We'll just do like a black dragon. That's always cool. So there's a black dragon. And then on the map itself, we'll put him down here in this water somewhere. So if I go to show NPC, drag this onto the map. Yeah, there we go. So this is kind of how this looks And then he's got dark vision, so that's why you see this here. And if you want to see that as the GM, like a player would, you need to turn on, you go into your settings, unlock the map, and you turn on the player preview. And that's kind of what the dragon actually sees. So you can do something like that if you want. Or if you want everyone to see everything, you can turn that off. But the trick is if you click on it the first time and then you deselect it, that can be problematic because you won't see through that individual's eyes. So you have to kind of be careful with that. Like where you're clicking, you have to select the token. It doesn't have anything to do with the combat tracker. It's more to do with selecting the token. So you have a select and a deselect, and that does make a difference. So if I go to, see, this is selected, that's deselected. So it makes a difference in the overall view. All right, so you might have something like this, and then maybe you want this to be like full screen. So you can do something like this, and then you can collapse this stuff down more in case you want more of a visual on the map. And I believe if you go to this full screen here, you can expand this out quite a bit. So that's a pretty big screen. And then you can move this over here if you want. So you don't have to have it necessarily over there. And you can use this as kind of like your battle map, and then have your chat window here. And then when it comes to battling, you can bring up your NPCs as you need them, and then do your attacks from here if you want. It's better to do it from the combat tracker, but if you have to, you can do your attacks from here. So this is kind of like a wider view, of the map. So you have that. And then if you want to switch it over to the 3D mode, you can go into the map settings, but you have to collapse it back to the standard. Yeah, I think you can do it in this mode here. So this is kind of an expanded version. And then if you want the navigation buttons, you got to turn those back on, and then you can use those to help you navigate, move the map around and such. So let's see what we got going on here. So this is kind of weird. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. It kind of lost its location, and I don't see the token either. How weird. But I think that has something to do with this increased size. So let me decrease that. Go back to the standard mode. Okay, so this is the standard mode now instead of the expanded view. Let's see what happens with that. I think it's because I had it expanded, why it lost it kind of moved this token. That's weird. All right, so I will go to zoom to fit on the map, and let's go back to the token view. So let's go. Yeah, so that's what it was. So I had it in the expanded mode, so that doesn't work very well in the expanded mode. But if you want to do this view, you can always drag it and set this where you want it. And once you set the size, you shouldn't have to mess with it too much more. Like if it's covering other things, you got to check that before. But basically, you have this set where you want it, and then make a shortcut for this. And then when it comes up in your game, when you're ready for it, you just pop that up and it's right there. So you don't have to mess around with this window too much. And if you lock this, you'll have a little bit more viewing space. And then you should be able to just kind of move this around. And if you have the token selected, you can use the arrow keys to move the dragon, assuming that you can climb up that ledge. I don't know how deep that ledge is. Probably at least 10 feet. Yeah, so anyways, you get the idea. It takes a bit to get all this stuff set up, but the main thing is the visual, right? You're trying to get a good display on your stream when you're doing your games and such. So that's kind of why we're doing this part of it. And then, of course, you have all this stuff. And if you leave it in this position, it will stay this way in most cases, unless you moved it before. So if I put all this back and I have all this set up, when I come back to this, it'll be just like this, unless I messed up or corrupted the campaign. The other thing you can do is if you need a little bit more desktop space, you can collapse the sidebar and move this over. You can collapse it again. So if you don't need these menus very much over here on the right, you can collapse it down to almost nothing. It gives you, another inch or so. And then on the options here, if you need to change anything around, you want to do all this stuff before your stream. Because I've seen people go, oh crap, I forgot to do this or whatever. And then this up here, if you want to switch to the tabletop view, there's a little toggle up here so that you got the classic view. And then if you want to see the turn order up here, you can turn that on or off. I think that's kind of a nicer visual than what we had before, where it was just static players. Now it actually shows the marching order. So that would be cool to capture that little section for OBS and then place that somewhere on your screen so that you can see that and kind of zoom in on it instead of just having it tucked away up here in a corner. So this would show the turn order, and you can kind of put a frame around it, and move it onto this desktop here, and that would give you the, you move that dice tray. Maybe you can move it down here to make it look bigger in your broadcaster. Maybe it'll be below on your overlay somewhere, but just kind of give you an idea of like some of the capabilities you might be able to use. But this is an important aspect of the visual part. There's other technical things that you got to deal with, like OBS settings and microphone settings and all kinds of crap. So there's a lot to it. So I'm gonna I just collapse this menu, but this is the toggle menu. And this gives you kind of your maximum space that a lot of people fight with. And then the stat block for this creature, if you double click on it, it's always going to be smack dab in the middle the first time you do it. Okay, if you move this and you resize it before your game or, right before your sessions for like a planned encounter, you can actually leave that there. And you can have basically this layout. So if you close this and now I double click on it, it's going to go right where you left it. And that's the key, is to get all these windows placed before you start. So let me, I'm going to go back into the campaign. I'm going to get another NPC. Let's go with the bandit. Okay, let's say there's a couple bandits in here. What you see is as soon as I open that up, that's going to go right in the middle. And the trick is, anything you're going to be using, whether it comes from the encounter or this list from the NPCs or wherever you drag it from, the first time you open, it's going to be in the middle. But once you do this, and then I'm going to drag this from here to this record, this is kind of, the thing you'll get used to after a while. And then I'll go ahead and make these visible, and then we'll take those guys. I'm going to change their faction to neutral, since they're not necessarily evil, but they're not good, but they're not evil either. So I can drag those guys onto the map here. So yeah, looks all right. So this is kind of what you want to be when you're getting ready to play. You got all your windows placed. You got all your stat blocks laid out. So when you go up and down your list right here, that's his dragon's turn. Let's say his turn's over. You can hit this thing here on top. It goes to the next actor. It's highlighted in here now. And you want to bring up a stat block. So you click on that, and that actually, see, that's why you need to place these ahead of time, because I didn't place that one. So each one of these has to be placed. So hit the down arrow, Open this up. Here's Bandit 2. Alright, so now they're placed. So I don't have to worry about that. And now I'll go back to the adult dragon. Click on the little link on here on the right, and there's the stat block. Next turn, click on this, there's a stat block. So that way you're not having it open in the middle while you're in the middle of the game. Sometimes it's inevitable, but if you know that it's going to open in the center, then you're just going to, you'll know to move it and put it where you want it. But that's kind of one of the things I think people fight with a lot at the beginning, is you're not sure, you're not certain how it behaves, and it just kind of goes haywire on you. It's really easy to get things covered up. Like this map, I think honestly it's a little excessive. I would probably go with maybe this at the least. Like, I don't think I'd go any smaller than that, because then it's hard to see in the stream. But that gives you a little room down here on the bottom. If you want to put your story entries, you know, whatever you're reading to your party, put it down here in this little spot. And then that way you have, you know, your adventure down here, your map, your stat blocks and your characters, and then combat tracker. And then up here you have this turn thing, or you can turn it off if you don't like that. And then of course you have, you know, your status down here, whose turn it is, your dice. So, you know, it's kind of just a matter of taste, preference, how you want to set this up. But it can really look nice. You really put a little effort into it, it'll look halfway decent. I'm not saying it's the best. I'm sure there's other things that look a lot better, but this is getting closer, much closer. And the reason this looks weird is because of the angle. Sometimes, like when you are moving these guys, the way it centers is the camera. So it's got the camera view. So I'm zooming away, and it's looking at me, and as I get closer, the center point is pivoting towards me. So that's why it looks like it's, you know, diagonal, but it's really not. It's just a perspective and the way the token is set up. So looks kind of weird, but when you move back, it'll go into position. And when you click on one of these guys, you're gonna have to kind of move in closer. So I'll turn on that navigation wheel here. And then once you have the camera view, you know, you can start zooming in on this guy. It's quite a bit smaller. That's the difference in the dragon and this thing. So you kind of get some scale there. So this guy is like maybe 10 feet up, and you can do that. Like if you want to call this 0 or this ground right here, it's probably -10 actually, but this would probably be 0 up here. So if I click on the bandit and I hold the Alt key, I could say that these guys are -10, but the only problem is it's on the same plane. So it can get kind of problematic. But as far as targeting goes, it would be accurate. So, but if you don't like that, you can always go back. So I'd probably, instead of doing that, I'd probably have this guy up here like that. Even though it doesn't look right, I'd probably have him, you know, basically he'd be up here until he got down to this ledge, and then I'd move him back down. So move, whoa. All right, so we moved him back into position, but you kind of get the idea that, you know, it can look goofy. And this happened because I actually clicked on it, and instead of doing, I was doing Control instead of Alt. So you want Alt to do the up and down, the Z-axis. If you hit Shift, you're on the flat map, it'll rotate it. If you hit Control, it's going to resize the token. So and just remember that program that Doug used to set up the XML is expecting a certain block height. So this one's probably way taller in height, so that's why it's rendering a lot larger than these others. So, and these guys don't have dark vision. How dare they? So I want to test something out. So let me go to options. Actually, I want to go to the effects. And I'm going to drag this torch onto one of these guys. Yeah, so there we go. So now one of them has a torch. So they weren't able to see really before. But anyways, that's kind of the way this is. Let me check out the player preview mode. So yeah, so this is what the players would see. So this one has a torch. This one doesn't. So if he moves away, it'll get harder to see. But you get the idea. So when you get this thing laid out, you'll have a good idea of where you want to put things. And you kind of want to keep them there if you can. It's almost impossible if you kind of run off the seat of your pants. But if you have some organization to this, it can go really quick and be a lot smoother. You're not always going to have that luxury. I realize that. Sometimes you got to pull things out that you weren't ready for. But in general, especially when you're running like a combat, you can have a lot of this already set in place. So this is where I'd want to be right before I stream. So all of my NPCs and players are in. The map is where I want it to go. And these could all be closed even. So I don't have to start off like that. You know, I can always have all that closed. And then as things happen, I can bring those up. So down here on the bottom, I have the shortcut for the map. And then I have these things all ready to go. So that's where you want to be when you start streaming or even when you're playing. It really helps a lot. And then I left room down here in case I want to put a story entry. So you might want to open up your, what is that? One of your books, like a reference manual. So we want to go to library. Let's go to modules, and we'll just go with this bestiary right now. Actually, SRD data reference manual. So you might put this down here as your, as you're going through the adventure. You can use this as your, as kind of like your story entry. And then whenever you need to access it, you can just scroll, and then you can use this, and I can actually move this up a little so I can have a little bit more room. There we go. So you use this for your story entries. Use your pages to go to the next page. You can make this a little bigger if you want. It just really kind of depends on how you run your table. Not everyone is this organized. Like, you're not always going to have this, but you want to try to strive for that if you can. Because I know there's some people out there that just kind of run willy-nilly, just grab things and they're off, off to the races. But if you know that the windows always open in the middle first, that's a big thing. So it sounds stupid, but it really is important. So let's just say if I grab a random NPC, I want to throw it in this battle. Let's bring out the bandit captain. See right there, it comes right in the middle. So if I put this here, then I knew, and I will know from this point on, it should be in the right spot. And then I'll drag this record into the combat tracker, make it visible, then drag this guy onto the map to help his allies. Yeah, so this is the bandit captain. So you get the idea that, you depending on what you're doing. This one looks kind of goofy. I don't know why, but it's because of the way I had it turned. Because that's what I'm saying. When you move it, it moves the camera too. So the closer you get, the weirder it kind of looks distorted. But when you come out like here, it looks good. But when you get right up close, it really starts looking funky. Yeah. And if you have the tokens selected and you have it'll move the map and the token. So if you just want to move the map, deselect the token. That way you're not moving it. If you have the token selected, it's going to move the map and the token, or the view. So you want to deselect whatever token you're on, and use your navigation arrows, or you're dragging stuff, and you can hold the middle mouse key and kind of hold down and move the view so you can see what's going on from different angles. But generally speaking, just getting used to the behavior of the camera and where your windows are laid out, and then also how you have your overlay. So that all this stuff kind of comes together after you get used to it and start using it more, practicing, getting used to the tool. So I've showed you some really, over the last few videos, I've showed you a lot of different tools. The only thing about that is I've had 2 years of practice, okay, with Canva and with some other editing programs. Whereas if you just start this today, it's not going to be that easy. Like, you're going to have to learn how to use the tool. It's just like Fantasy Grounds. You got to learn the behavior of the application. Otherwise, it's not going to be what you think. It's going to be like, well, how the hell did he do that? It must be nice. That kind of thing, because you're not used to the application, or you don't know what the heck's what. So that's going to take a bit, okay? Just to be honest with you, put in a few months. Get the program down, get the apps down. If you got the time, do it. If not, then it's not much we can do about that. But a lot of people don't have the time to do this, and that's the other part of it, is just having the resources and showing you how to do it is only half the battle. You got to have the time to put into it. So I just wanted to be honest up front about it and not trying to cherry coat it, because I know a lot of times when you watch these streams, everything's already done. It looks great, but you don't really know or see what went into getting to that point. When you watch videos for like other virtual tabletops, everything's smooth, laid out, everything looks great. But they don't show you all the effort and the work and the hassles and the setup and all that stuff. So there is that, no matter what platform you use. And, it depends on your familiarity with it and how much you put into it and all that stuff. That's a big part of it. It's not just Fantasy Grounds or Foundry or Roll20. It's the person using the software too. They got to learn how to use OBS, how to use Discord, how to use their equipment, how to use the programs to edit stuff. There's a lot to it. It's not something you're going to know overnight. But I think that's all I've got for today. That's basically the end of this series. This is episode number 4, if you want to go back for where I started. The first 2 episodes are pretty long because there's a lot to cover, but all in all, I think if you go through these, you can skip through them. I'll put chapters on them eventually, so you don't have to keep searching for the one thing that you want. But I just wanted to show you some of this stuff and kind of give you an idea of the reality of it, and also the tools and the resources. All that stuff will be at the end of the video once I post it. And then all this stuff I was showing you is kind of like operating the table kind of thing. And then I was putting the finishing touches. I don't know. What do you guys think? Does it look all right? I don't think it looks too bad. It ain't perfect, but at least it doesn't look cheesy. Like, I've seen streams where you have this icon of this alligator that doesn't even look like it's part of the game, and it's like the streamer's like logo thing, and then it looks like a college football game. And I thought that's kind of not really my thing. It's just something I wouldn't watch. It's just kind of like a gamer from the early 2000s. It's like, come on, man. There's a lot of cool stuff out there. Now you can add like animated GIF files that will play little miniature videos, on the sides here. The only problem is it's kind of distracting and it's resource intensive. So if you're going to do something like that with moving stuff, just remember that's going to add more overhead. It's going to add more bandwidth. So you don't want to add too many assets to OBS, because it'll tax your system, just like Fantasy Grounds will when you add too much crap to it. Same type of thing. So anyways, take care, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week. This is episode 4. Episode 1 I did like last Friday, I think. So I'll put this in there's like a playlist I got going on. And this Friday, I'm going to be doing the map for Lost Mines of Sojkant. So if you guys are into maps and such, I'm going to finish that up. I only did the base line of sight. I didn't get to do all the fun stuff yet. So anyway.